it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker this evening, a politician who can no longer be described as a rising star, but rather one whose star has risen. We're delighted he was able to join us for our drinks reception and to say a few words to open our proceedings this evening. Sajid Javid was elected as the Conservative MP for Bromsgrove in 2010. He became one of the founder members of the Free Enterprise group of Conservative MPs, with which the IEA worked closely to promote market-orientated policy solutions in Westminster. Just 2 years after entering Parliament, he became Economic Secretary to the Treasury and a year later became Financial Secretary. In 2014, he achieved the remarkable and rare distinction of becoming a full Cabinet Minister in his first term as a Member of Parliament when David Cameron appointed him Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. After the Conservatives' outright victory in last month's general election, he has assumed the key role of Secretary of State for Business, Innovation and Skills and has already hit the ground running through proposed changes in the laws governing strikes in the public sector. Commentator Ian Dale wrote of Sajid, his fast rise up the greasy pole into George Osborne's inner circle is not only proof of this man's ambition, but also his talent. But our first speaker tonight is not merely a talented and ambitious man, he is a serious thinker too. A regular contributor and attendee at IEA events and those of other think tanks, Sajid is a keen supporter of markets, free enterprise and a thriving private sector. Now, some of us might question at the IEA when we look at Sajid's meteoric political career whether the country ever really needed a department for culture, media and sport. And of course, IEA spokespeople have also been known to question whether a department for business, innovation and skills is necessarily a function that plays to the state's comparative advantage. But it's worth saying this. What a breath of fresh air it is to have a Secretary of State for Business who actually thinks business is a good thing. And given the many conversations I've had with Saj over the years, I can also assure you that he thinks innovation and skills are very good things too. My lords, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage a great friend of the IEA's, the Secretary of State for Business, Innovation and Skills, the Right Honourable Sajid Javid MP.
Thank you, Mark, for that warm, characteristic welcome. Now, let me start by congratulating the Institute of Economic Affairs on its 60th birthday. We all know how hard it is to get economists to agree on anything. As President Reagan said, if Trivial Pursuit was designed by economists, it would have 100 questions, but 3,000 answers. But I'm sure that everyone here tonight agrees that it's an amazing achievement for a think tank to reach its Diamond Jubilee. For 60 years now, you've been thinking the unthinkable, winning hearts and minds and influencing governments from Westminster to Washington to Warsaw and everywhere in between. Of course, it could have all been very different. After leaving the RAF, a young Sir Anthony Fisher was set on a career in politics. But Friedrich Hayek told him that if he really wanted to change the world, he should forget about becoming an MP. And instead, he should start a think tank. I don't know if that means I'm in the wrong job, but I do know that we should all be very grateful for Hayek's intervention. Because the think tank Sir Anthony went on to establish would go on to play a huge and important role in political and economic history. Now, when I was born, the IEA was already a teenager. By the time I joined, when I was a student at Exeter, it was well into its middle age. And it was already probably one of the most influential think tanks in the Western world. the Institute's work really resonated with me, taking the theories of the economists I had admired, Hayek, Friedman, Minford, and others, and showing how easily and practically they could be applied to the real world. It both reflected and deeply influenced my views, helping to develop the economic and political philosophy that guides me to this day. And its backstory spoke to me too, showing that you don't have to be fabulously wealthy to believe that capitalism is a good thing. Like Ralph Harris, I'm a working-class kid that grew up in an inner-city estate. Like Ralph Harris, I saw first-handed the realities of poverty. And like Ralph Harris, I have never been in any doubt that free enterprise is the best way to bring prosperity to as many people as possible. That the free market can solve not just economic problems, but social problems too. That was true back then when I was a student, and it's just as true today. Our economy is growing faster than any other G7 country, and more people are in work than ever before. But if that success is going to be maintained and built on, we cannot afford to stand still. We need to increase productivity, drive investment into our industries, and grow exports. Not just to make individuals better off, although that's a noble aim in itself, but also because a strong economy allows us to protect our most vulnerable citizens, to pay for the NHS, for schools, for the armed forces, for police, to help build roads and railways, and to give young people the skills that they need to get by in this modern world. None of this can be achieved without a strong economy. And a strong economy will never be delivered by attacking big business or by endlessly raising taxes or by wrapping up innovators in red tape. That's why my enterprise bill will free businesses from another £10 billion of needless regulation. And that's why we'll keep on cutting taxes. And that's why I want to make sure that Britain becomes the best place in the world to start a business. Now, during the Cold War, the physical bulwark against communism was provided by the formidable military might of the NATO alliance. But throughout that time, the ideological bulwark, the theoretical and philosophical defense, was brigaded by the likes of the Institute of Economic Affairs. While our troops and bombs and planes protected the West from the Red Army, in the battle of ideas, our generals were Sir Anthony, Lord Harris, and Anthony Seldon. Today, the Cold War is rapidly becoming a distant memory, consigned to the textbooks of history. Most economic students arriving at universities this autumn will have been born 8 years after the Berlin Wall fell. But the work of the IEA is as important as ever, because the free market is the most efficient, most enduring, effective system ever devised by mankind. Since the 1970s, the number of people living around the world on $1 a day, adjusted for inflation, of course, has fallen by 80%. That's the biggest increase in prosperity the world has ever seen. And it didn't happen because of international aid, or because of the World Bank, or because of the IMF. It was brought about by the spread of capitalism. The free market is the greatest force ever created for lifting people out of poverty. But we must not lose sight of the fact that it is an artificial creation. it is not the natural order of things. We have to consciously choose to embrace it, choose to continue its legacy. President Reagan was talking about democracy when he said that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. But his idea that freedom is not passed on, but it must be fought for, protected, and defended applies equally to the free market. We neglect it at our peril, and if we fail to support it, it could crumble in the face of countless tiny attacks. Or, as George W. Bush put it in slightly more succinct terms during the global financial crisis, this sucker could go down. If the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, then we will always need the likes of the IEA to be the watchmen of capitalism. We will always need the heirs of Fisher, of Harris, of Selden to make the case for free enterprise, to be its last line of defense and its first line of attack. This is the role that the IEA has played so well for 60 years, and so you have so much to celebrate tonight. But I've always believed that the best birthdays are those that have yet to arrive. And I know that, in spite of everything that you achieved since 1955, that Institute of Economic Affairs' best years are yet to come. Thank you.